welcome back to the Big Plantation. We are moving into the guest segment of our show now here with Garrison Lee from Erra, the lead singer of Erra. Garrison, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, not a problem, man.
So, as I said, this is a continued effort here at the Big Plantation for us to reach out to more diverse audiences and more diverse musicians and more conscious musicians and artists. You're coming up on your second album release. That's actually coming out tomorrow, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And
Well, it's coming
so,
out. It's March the
what were
28th.
some of
It's
the
actually coming out the 29th.
like lyrical inspirations that you had on this album? Because I know going back to the first album, there was a lot of different things that were talked about with White Noise. That kind of struck me as talking about the quantum connection that everybody has between each other, and you're even throwing in the Sumerians, and just kind of seemed to me the state of the world even kind of came into it a little bit. So what were some of the lyrical inspirations for the new album, Augment?
Well, the new album, when I go into writing lyrics, I always try to write from the point of view of a listener, and I always try to write about something that I would want to hear a band talk about. And there are certain bands that I've listened to, Deftones being one of them, and Circa Survive being the other, that really influenced me lyrically, and influenced me heavily on Augment. And basically, I like to write from personal experience as well, and I just think it's cool to talk about. And it's good to inform people of stuff that's beyond that of the popular, or what's popular to talk about in music like this these days, which is like nonsense and unintelligent subject matter. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Whatever is pushed on the radio, they just take these talentless kids like Bieber, and basically they have the money and the artists, or well, not the artist, the label and the recognition to be able to just throw anybody they want out there, and it really drowns out the people with real talent. And I find that to be a shame, and that's why I'm driven to a lot of metal music, because it's very intricate and technical. But I see kind of a trend going on in the metal scene of certain topics that seem to be coming up by a lot of the bands that are gaining ground, like you guys, and say Born of Osiris. They seem to be talking about a lot of conscious type things. Meshuggah has always had something going on there. Why do you think that this kind of trend is going on in the metal scene?
Well, I think that I can say from my point of view, I think that like I try to write about something that connects everyone together, not just one thing that only a few people can connect with. And I think talking about, ancient civilizations and how they relate to like the current civilization that we all live in, and like where we came from as humans, how we interact with each other as humans, and just as a society as a whole. Like, I think that's the kind of stuff that people can relate to when they hear my music. And I think that's what other bands are trying to do as well. They're trying to represent their band and their music and talk to their fans, the people that hear their band, in a way that they can relate to them, and in a way that means more to them than just like, this is cool. Like, means like it could actually influence their lives.
Yeah, because metal in general seems to be making huge strides coming away from talking about, gore and death. And I mean, you're always going to have those, I guess, sects of the metal scene that is talking about, crazy stuff like Whitechapel's first album, where it's talking about necrophilia and stuff like that. But yeah, it's refreshing to see to see this message that's coming through from a lot of the bands. But if you can give me like a specific, you said you like talking about ancient civilizations and stuff like that. Give me an example, because I know the song. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's called Seven. The third song off of the first album is talking a lot about what seems to be to me to be the Enuma Elish, which for any of our listeners that aren't familiar, the Enuma Elish is basically a written account of what's called the Sumerian creation myth. And the Sumerians were a civilization of people over 6,000 years ago in what is now modern-day Iraq. And they literally wrote these stories into stone. And it's very interesting, some of the stuff they knew. But if you could kind of give me your perspective on that song.
Well, that song in particular is talking about Erra, which was basically a plague god. But it's really hard to be specific with the story, because it's such an old story, and it's from such an old civilization, that there are so many different takes on it and so many different translations of it. So it's hard to be like as specific and say what I think and not like contradict what someone else thinks about the same exact story. But from my personal point of view, It's about Erra and the plague gods and how like Erra came to be and how Erra like affected creation, how the seven demons that Erra was in command of affected the creation of that civilization back during that time. And what civilization that is, people argue. Some say Sumerian, some say Mesopotamian. Like, it's really hard to understand. It's really hard to just pinpoint like what it's talking about specifically. But as our band, like representing our band, representing that song, that's the story it's talking about. The story of Erra and the seven demons and how it affected the civilization and the creation of that civilization during that time period.
So, what if you could kind of expand on you said you like to talk about ancient civilizations and how some of the stuff that they knew and that was important to them back then relates so much to our modern day situation, and you said we talk a lot about things that unite us. I think that's awesome. If you could give me kind of an example of what is something that might be like lost knowledge that you feel that would be relevant or important to today's world.
Um, you know, I feel like a lot of people misunderstand history just in general. I know that I've studied history many times, like in high school and in college, and it wasn't until recently in college that I realized how much people misunderstood their history. And just as early as the formation of America, the history behind the formation of America is so misunderstood and so watered down and so like it's so misinterpreted. Like, everybody believes it's one thing when it's actually like completely opposite. And to be more specific, everyone believes that it was founded by, our forefathers, and it was founded like with pride and dignity and everything like that. But America was founded on murder, and it was founded on genocide. And people don't realize that. And they don't realize just the darkness that comes with the American history. And that goes back all the way to civilizations like Sumeria and Mesopotamia, some of the first civilizations on this earth that we know of. And, people don't understand how, like, the ideals from back then still come into play today, and how we're so, today is so relative to ancient times. And we're still learning some of the things today, and we still don't know some of the things today that they knew back then in Sumerian times and in Mesopotamian times and stuff like that. And I think it's important to try and research those things and find them out on your own, because if you go by what everybody tells you, then you're going to be misinformed. You're going to hear what the general consensus is, and the general consensus, in my opinion, is always wrong. And it's not until you dig deeper and find out things for yourself that you really can come to discover a truth inside of something that has been so distorted over the years.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff, man. I definitely agree. It seems to me that there's always something bigger and better beneath the surface of what is the status quo. Like you said, a lot of history is just made out to be either very boring or is just painted totally inaccurately through the schools, which are state run. The schools are public schools mandated by the federal government, and if history is always written by the victors, and we are now governed people, they're going to present it in a way that benefits them or makes it or maintains that status quo. Same with music. As we touched on, mainstream music is filled with just I think there is some good in electronic music, but a lot of this electronic music that's coming out is just devoid of actually, using instruments and actually you doing music and talent and substance and depth and everything that music is supposed to be about on a human level. So, yeah, I would agree. And I personally feel that, the government plays a big role in covering up what is the real history, because if you obviously, as you've experienced and I've experienced and a lot of people have experienced with the advent of the internet, is that history, once you start looking into it for yourself and start looking at what interests you, it's absolutely fascinating stuff. Whereas before, when you were taught it and had it shoved down your throat in a mundane way, it was pretty much disregarded.
Right. I completely agree. I completely agree.
So to move on to some of the newer material here, I'm going to assume that that most of our audience here has not even heard of you guys, because we're trying to blend our audiences with music and the message of freedom and the message of philosophical anarchism. But to get some of our audience up to speed, one of the songs that you've put out from the album, Hybrid Earth, which has a video out on YouTube. If you guys type in Erra, Erra, Hybrid Earth, it's a music video available for free on YouTube. I'm just going to go through the lyrics real quick because it's not too big. But interlaced fingers, the locking of hands, omnipotence entwined with man, alteration before conception, they pretense to coalesce to form this imperfect plan, unconsciously bound to one another, liberated emotions are becoming smothered, dynamics of the absolute contort our narrow view, we are not meant for this hybrid birth, inhumanity crowns the earth, this hybrid birth. Momentum is your venom, clinging to progress we embrace the toxin, children of the ancients, we've forgotten innocence, upkept instincts enslaved, inefficient. We were not meant for this hybrid birth. Inhumanity crowns the earth, designer of mystification, imposer upon a fit creation. Momentum is your venom. Clinging to progress, we embrace the toxin. Children of the ancients, you've forgotten innocence. Unkept instincts, enslaved, inefficient, inhumanity crowns the earth. Momentum is your venom. Children of the ancients, you've forgotten innocence. Enslaved, inefficient, they breathe with us. They've bred with us. They are self-proclaimed behemoths, bound by our own desire, seduced and expired. Self-proclaimed behemoths, bound by our own desire, seduced and expired. Now, I find that fascinating, and to me, it says a lot of correct me if I'm wrong. The way I see it is it's kind of like a societal statement of where we have gone, how much we have lost, and become, in a sense, depraved as a society. And I mean, what's your take on it?
You're not too far off. Really, when I was writing those lyrics, I was just thinking about how people have been told things. It's basically a representation of how people have been told things throughout their lives and how they've come to embrace those things as their own beliefs and as their own knowledge, and not to seek anything beyond that, and not to find things out for themselves, like we were talking about earlier, like finding out the history for yourself. And it's referencing a story about gods that came down from the heavens and mated with men and women of the earth, and produced this offspring that was like a half god, half human offspring, and how those became like the rulers of the earth. And the reason I chose that story to represent this is because it represents how people are told things from a more powerful person, say their teachers in school, or the government tells the teachers and the teachers tell the kids. It's all a trickle-down effect from a more powerful person, from a more powerful association. And, people they take what they hear and they take what they learn, and then they take what they're told and they apply it to their lives and they embrace it, and they're like, this is what is truth, and I won't change that. I won't refute that. Or they take it and they try and discover, they take it with a grain of salt and objectively, and they try and discover for themselves, what about this is true? What about this is not true? What is the actual truth? And people today are turning in to a person that's unsure of themselves, that's unsure of the society that they're in, and there's so few people that will stand up and question it publicly to the point where other people can see that it's not all what you're told. It's more. There's more to life. There's more to our history. There's more to what you should be than what you're told. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big advocate of doing everything you can to get your children out of public school and doing either homeschooling or some kind of private schooling, because really the way the system runs is it becomes a cult of personality in school where regurgitating information is held in better esteem than free thought, and uh, following the status quo with your peers and being popular and stuff like that, because of the social ramifications if you don't do that, are hard on people, and that seems to manifest into our adulthood. And then as you get to an adult, that cult of personality for what's cool in school seems to be replaced by consumerism outside, and everybody chases the almighty dollar. So I definitely agree. But what is your opinion on what causes these kinds of issues? Why is it, do you think, that we are having the truth blinded from us? What is the mechanism that you feel is making people this way?
It's really hard to say. I can say from my personal experience that something that changed my perspective even very recently. I was just in a college course. It was early American literature, and I was taking it from this professor that was he was from Alabama, but he had a very philosophical look on life and a very soft philosophical look on education. And the way he taught the class was he taught by asking us questions, and he taught by letting us read like what we were supposed to read, and then interpreting it in our own way and saying what we thought was happening. And it was so cool because I'd never taken a literature class that was more of a history class and more of a philosophy class than that one. And I think what it is the constraint of people being taught in school that what you're reading, this is a fact, and this is what's going to be on the test. Like 1+1 is 2. So that's why, people aren't thinking for themselves. They're like, I read it, that's what it says, that's what the answer is going to be. But they don't think why is this story told this way? Like, who wrote this story, and why would they want me to believe what they're writing? What point of view, like what side are they coming from? What have they experienced that has affected them to where they would tell this story in this way? And then when you read so many, once you get into like a higher level of education, you read so many like contradicting text about the same subject. And that's why you ask those questions, like why would they write it this way? Why would this person write it this way? Where are they coming from? What has someone done to them to make them feel this way? What has someone done to them? Like, what is their rhetoric in writing this? You know what I mean? And it's just like, I think that's a big problem in like earlier levels of education, lower levels of education, that people just are confined to reading a definition and just regurgitating it on a test and not dwelling on why it is that it's defined that way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. Basically, we are molded to be good at taking tests, but not good at thinking. You know what I mean? We aren't really taught the things that are important, like how to start a business, or just free thought, how critical thinking, the Socratic method, and things like that. Things that can teach a person to really find themselves and what interests them, and educate themselves, and give them that incentive. Because we it seems to me that it's more of this one size fit all, everybody gets the same treatment, that is coming with what I see as creeping socialism across the country. It's happening with medical, the medical industry more and more. School has been that way, especially ever since No Child Left Behind. And it seems like the system wants to make everybody into a unit of the state, to me. So that being said, what do you feel is like the state of like freedom in this country?
I think it would be disturbing for the majority of the citizens of America, of the United States. I think it would be disturbing for them to find out like some of the truths within the government and within this country that they thought for so long were truths that aren't truths. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people would be incredibly surprised to find out what the real facts are, as opposed to the facts they're told about the government and about this country and about what's going on within this country. I do believe that we have like a very, very powerful government, and that the citizens are kind of a slave to what the government wants, and I believe that it's become kind of like a game for politicians and for government officials, that it's more about industry rather than about the citizens. And it's like, how can we benefit industry and with disregard to the citizens of this country? That's why the top 1% of the country has more wealth than the 6 billion people living in it.
Yeah, it's basically become fascism, where the government has merged with corporations, and it's a real shame, because there's a lot of people who fall into this rhetoric of anti-capitalism when we don't have it. You know what I mean? When the government is taking taxes from people and giving it to corporations to subsidize them, so that genetically modified foods are somehow now cheaper than organic corn. That's not capitalism. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who get that conflated and blame capitalism for the problem. But if you said you think a lot of people would be shocked and appalled to find out some of the truths in our government. I totally agree, and that's why I, have gone on this crusade where, I've been in the game of activism for, a good 4 years now, and I'm trying to grow this show. If you can you give me an example of one thing that really shocked you when you found out about our government?
You know, I'll say this about that. To find out, to discover that most decisions, and I would say that this is generalizing, but the more and more that I've researched it and the more and more I've looked into it, it does seem like it is the majority of decisions made are all made due to who can fund this, who can support us with like this monetary, like it's all about monetary value. And to think that the government is trying to run a country based on who can back them monetarily the best, and they will benefit that country. It's not that industry. I'm sorry, the best, because it's never a person. It may be a person on a state level. It may be a person here and there, but it is the industry that they are so like enthralled with and that they are so dependent on to support them so that they can support the industry. And it leaves out the citizens. And I know like I'm kind of restating what I said earlier, but to find out how unimportant it is, how unimportant we are as citizens to the government that run this country, and to think that we're living in a democracy is like, that's one of the truths that I think that people don't realize, or that people choose to ignore. Because I do think that some people realize that, but they choose to ignore it because they're comfortable and they're complacent, and they don't want to make a ruckus. They don't want to, start a revolution because they're content and they have no motivation to go beyond the norm.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a growing trend, and it's a trend that's always been there. And I think with how bad the economic situation is getting, people are starting to see it more and more. Where it's people are starting to question things like, why is the former head of Monsanto now the head of the FDA? Why is the former head of Goldman Sachs now the head of the Federal Reserve? Why are the big banks like Goldman Sachs funding both parties in the presidential elections, and then the people who like Ron Paul who get all donations from grassroots are somehow shunned because they have a different message and they don't follow the status quo of the Republican Party or even the Democrat Party. And I agree that the more that you pay attention to it, it obviously becomes that there is no two-party system even. And I personally think that politics in general is the problem, is the mechanism by which they make us believe that we have a choice, and the mechanism by which they make us think that we have a say in our society. I think it's all it's the game which they put over for us to play to let us think that we are causing change, while in the backgrounds they are doing everything that you describe through the circle jerks of lobbying and subsidization, and then in turn passing laws like, for example, the Monsanto Protection Act that basically made them immune. It's like I said before, fascism is, and I don't think a lot of people realize how far down the fascism road we've gone.
Right. I agree. I agree with you completely.
So, as far as the album, how would you describe like the change in sound here? I mean, for anybody who hasn't listened here, Garrison here has a pretty nice range that he uses. It's not all just Cookie Monster growls and stuff like that. There are some cleans on the album. You get your more hard-nosed metalheads who look down on that, but I think it works pretty well. I think you pull it off pretty well. But I also noticed that there's a lot more like melody into the album. What was that, just like a natural evolution, or was there a discussion about the sound of the album, or how did that go?
Well, we when we came out with Impulse and we toured on that album for a little over a year, we found out like what everybody was really clinging on to with that album, like what were the favorite aspects of that album from our fans. And I think we went into writing Augment with that in mind, and I know that we definitely tried to incorporate more of what our fans were I guess not obsessing over, but more of what our fans were really clinging on to from Impulse. So we went to the studio with that in mind, and we tried to be, we wanted to write a more aggressive, yet a catchier version of Impulse. And I think we really pulled that off. But when I say like catchier version, we didn't want to write anything watered down. We didn't want to water down our riffs. We didn't want to water down the sound of our band and make it something that it would disappoint kids who were really into Impulse and were really into even our older stuff that was, even completely different than what we're playing now. So we just wanted to write a more aggressive, a catchier, and version of Impulse without watering anything down. And I think we did the best we could at accomplishing that.
Yeah, I mean, from what I hear, it sounds very good. I'm excited about it. I'll definitely be picking it up here soon. You guys are wrapping up a tour right now, right?
Yeah, we are. We're on tour with Reflections right now. We're both releasing our albums.
So you care to? I know there's only a few days left on the tour. What cities will you be hitting on left on the tour?
I can tell you right now. Let me grab my tour pass so I don't miss say anything.
Because you'd always be surprised at like how many people are listening. I just got people talking to me from Australia, so who knows? Maybe somebody will hit up the show. I know if it was in PA, I'd be hitting it up. Reflections is also another very good band for anybody who wants to check them out.
Yeah, they're a really great band, really cool dudes. We only have 2 more days after tonight. Tonight we're in Cleveland, Tennessee at the Warehouse venue. Tomorrow we're going to be in Indianapolis, Indiana, and at the Emerson Theater. And then we're going to finish up in Columbus, Ohio at Kobo Live.
Awesome. So you as an artist, if you have one thing that your listeners can walk away from this album thinking differently about, or if you can impart one thing on your listeners after listening to this album, what would it be? What encompasses Augment to you?
To me, it's a really heavy album, both lyrically and musically. And I think anything that's going to come out of my band, it's going to be like fraught with emotion, whether it be in guitar riffs, drumming patterns, or the lyrics that are written and sung and screamed in the album. As the lyricist, I really like when people, and I really hope that people will read into the lyrics, because they're not easy to get the first time around. And I understand that. Like, a lot of people don't grasp them, or they just hear them in one ear out the other, and I understand that. But if you really, I find like our music, the more you read them, the more you'll get out of them. And I think the more you listen to our album, the more you'll hear out of the album, and the more it'll click with you. And I don't know, maybe people will walk away from this album with thinking about something, thinking about their lives, or maybe thinking about the message that I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, I agree, and that's exactly why I wanted to have you on this program here, because I definitely see the message, and I definitely see like one of the first thing that struck me is I remember I had heard of you guys when you guys released the lyric video for White Noise, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got out of that is that you were talking about the quantum connection between people, how we are all connected at one on a quantum level, and how our actions all reverberate through each other, and how a lot of people don't see it, and even though it's right there in plain sight.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a part of it, and the dichotomy of religion and science is also a huge part of that song, and I think there's a lot that people can take away from that song as well.
Awesome. Well, we've got about a minute and a half left here in the show. If you've got anything that you would like to wrap up on, if you would like to anything you want to plug, where can people find out about Erra? Where can people buy the album when it comes out tomorrow?
Our new album is called Augment. Our band name is Erra with 2 R's. So, if you're looking it up, it's ERRA. And you can buy it on iTunes. You can buy it on merchnow.com. You can buy it from Amazon, I believe, and it may be in a few stores near you. Just keep an eye out for it, but you can definitely pick it up on the internet. So it comes out the 29th, and pick up our album, catch us on tour. We'll be out on tour with Ice Nine Kills as soon as this one ends. So,
awesome. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Big Plantation. We're going to play you out from a song on it called Frostbite.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later.